2.6, 2.7, number 12. You should have a similar rational expression. So I took mine and I typed it in to my calculator. I have two terms on top, two terms on the bottom. So again, parentheses around the top, parentheses around the bottom. And when I look at this graph, it looks like it's in the top, what I call the top right corner, bottom left corner. So let's see why it looks the way it does. First thing I like to do is look to see if there are any holes or vertical asymptotes. And basically what I'm doing is taking the bottom and setting it equal to 0. This time, because the x is negative, I'm going to add it to this side. So when I add it to the 0, it becomes positive x. And then the 1 is left there. So x equals 1 if you'd rather look at it that way, just flip it around. All right, so what that tells me then is when I go to graph this thing, I can move 1 to the right and put in a vertical asymptote. Then I look for horizontal asymptotes. Now the top has an x to the first power. The bottom also has an x to the first power. So be careful, it's not in what we call descending order. But what that tells me then is I do y equals LC over LC, leading coefficient over leading coefficient. So the leading coefficient technically is -3 on top and -1 on the bottom. So remember, you should always write the x first and then the constants. But with a negative sign on this problem, they're putting the negative in the middle, and that's why they wrote it the way they wrote it. So anyway, this turns out to be y equals 3. So you're going to go up 3, put this horizontal asymptote in there. And that is why we saw it in the upper right-hand corner, and then we see it in the lower left-hand corner. Now, I sketched it in, but I need to find out, where we're touching the x and y axis here. So now, I think the y-intercepts are the easiest to find because you just put 0 in for your x. So, if I put a 0 here and a 0 here, I'm left with 1 over 1. So 1 over 1 would be simply 1. So I would actually hit, so I would, move this graph so that it hit at 0, 1. And then to find x intercepts, it's what makes the top 0 without making the bottom 0. So I take my 1 minus 3x, I set it equal to 0. Again, I would move the 3x to that side because it's negative. When you add it to the other side, it's positive. And then divide by 3. So I'm getting an x equals 1/3. Excuse me. And so that particular one would be right here, 1/3 to the right, comma 0. That would be your x-intercept. So now we want to answer those questions that are at the bottom. And so the x-intercept would be 1/3, comma 0. The y-intercept, we said, was 0, 1. The vertical asymptote was at x equals 1. The horizontal asymptote was at y equals 3. And then remember, we didn't have a slant, so answer D and E for that slant.